Hello everyone, it's Kevin Annett in the flesh, and Happy New Year, by the way.
Good evening, everyone. This is Alexandra Metters of GalacticConnection.com. I have an on-the-fly interview with Kevin Annett, and I know many of you have been wondering, what's going on with Kevin? Where is he gone? What's he doing? What's happening behind the scenes? We haven't really heard a lot from him lately, and he's going to clarify all the good things that are going on behind closed doors, so to speak. If anybody has not checked out Kevin's website, it's ITCCS.org. And for those of you that are relatively new to his work, Kevin was not only nominated as a Nobel Peace Prize nominee in 2013, but many, many people out there know that his work as a field secretary for the International Tribunal into Crimes of Church and State has really launched him into one of the most valiant light warriors out there, really trying to bring forth and stop child sacrifice and satanic ritual all around the world. So today he has some news. First of all, I just wanted to say hello. How are you, Kevin? How are you doing in your travels?
I'm fine, Alexandra. Thanks for asking.
You're welcome. You're welcome. So I understand that you just released a new book called Samuel Wedge, Memoir of Necropolis. It sounds very intriguing. What's that all about?
Well, actually, the idea came from my dad, Bill Annett, who's also a writer. It's based on what happened, it's an autobiographical novel, kind of loosely based on my life. And Dad got the idea from reading a book called Joseph Anton that was written by Salman Rushdie, which, again, was an attempt through a novel to describe the really horrendous events in his life when the Ayatollah Khomeini put a contract out on his life after a book he wrote called the Satanic Verses. Now, Rushdie got a lot of support and publicity for that because the Islamic world was trying to kill him. Now, by analogy, Dad thought, well, the United Church of Canada, the government of Canada, and assorted other criminal elements have been trying to whack me for 20 years and have been doing a fairly good job, at least initially. So why not, write something that relevant about our own situation from your own kind of, using the license of fiction.
Right.
And it actually helps me go into areas that I couldn't when I'm doing the usual kind of factual description of things. Because, for example, I reconstruct what probably went on in those boardrooms in the United Church when they were trying to figure out how to deal with this whistleblower, right? Well, you go after his wife, you go after the people around him. So kind of putting on flesh what I knew all along, but you can never get confirmation on, but these things that happen, right? So I had a lot of fun doing it, and it's out now it's published by Author House in America. You can get it through Amazon.com and all the major bookstores. And I just think it's coming out at a good time that we're doing all this work on Kanata and all the great successes that we're seeing all over the world where more and more, child traffickers and that are being exposed, and people seem to be waking up finally to a lot of the stuff.
Yeah, it's big time. People are really becoming more aware of this. Can you do us a favor and hold the book up all the way to the screen so people can see it?
Yeah, I like the front photo. It's
go.
a churchyard.
Yeah,
They're
that's
kind of
cool.
macabre. And of course, Samuel Wedge is the character based on me. And Memoir of Necropolis, or Necropolis being City of the Dead, refer not only to all those children who died, but also the kind of dead culture that could have done it in the first place, the spiritual, and it's kind of a theme running through the book of what it's like to be part of the dead, if you like, to try to wake up from this deadness that we're part of, trying to communicate with the dead who are not willing to listen about their own crimes or their own situation. I mean, it's that kind of metaphor all through the book. I wanted to read to you a short excerpt from my new book, Samuel Wedge, Memoirs of Necropolis. It's a autobiographical piece of fiction based loosely on my life, but also going into a lot of other things. And it's released now through Author House. You can get it through Amazon.com or anywhere. That is happening in conjunction with our new blog radio program, Radio Free Kanata, which will be airing Sunday, March 1st, the first program. It's every week on Sundays, 3 p.m. Pacific Time, 6 p.m. Eastern Time, at bbsradio.com/Radio Free Kanata. So please tune in for that. I'm going to read a short excerpt from this book,
as kind of an insight and guide into life these days for our movement and myself. My life hung by the slenderest of threads, saved only by my comrades. Without them, I would have been doomed. We stick together like this, from one end of the world to another, few in number but sure of one another, and confident in the march of history. And that's a quote from Victor Surge in his book Memoirs of a Revolutionary. Yesterday, I took a drive all by my lonesome past the curve of the peninsula, where the Atlantic breeze blasts everything clean and clear. Dolores didn't come because I asked her not to. Then I found a dune not littered with beer cans and butts and prickly grass, and hunkered down with my gin and tonic and some cheese sandwiches to see if I could forget my ogres for a while, or even find out whether I wanted to. It would have been a perfect day, save for something I saw on my way down there that poked at me until night came. I heard their shouts before their little gathering hove into view as I made a right onto the Halifax River overpass. The dozen people were gathered outside some government office. They had an old-fashioned megaphone with them, and they held aloft the kind of homemade protest sign that I used to excel in cooking up with just a night's notice. I was moving too fast to read their declaration, but angry words about children and benefits and making rich people pay shot into the open window of my car like determined gnats. And as I slowed to make the turn and looked toward them, a young black woman in the protest glared at me and jerked her middle finger in my direction. 40 and more years ago, and even 10 summers past, I had been that black woman. I resented her briefly, not even for her seeing my car or my pigmentation rather than me, but because she remained what I had lost. Blunted and shattered finally, I had subsided to Holly Hill, Florida, something more than a veteran after 10,000 battles, yet still breathing somehow after all of my demanding of justice from a machine. But still there are children eaten by Moloch, and so the shouts and placards go on, with or without me. It's just that my arms feel not only heavy nowadays, but ridiculous, holding up the obvious for the world to gawk at and ignore like it always has. All that said, the protesters haunted me, out there on the dunes, even after an hour's sunlight and my emptied flask and full stomach should have exercised them. I felt old and useless. But then I recalled Gail. Gail weighed in at over 300 pounds that morning, that she had a Weasley Art Sanderson by the throat and backed up against the wall of his United Church office building like the villain she knew him to be. Her righteous anger melted the bureaucrat into nothing as she screamed in his face that bright, bright morning. "How fucking dare you," she screamed as he winced. "How fucking dare you show your face after what you've done to Sam and his family?" She gripped Sanderson by his business suit lapels and resumed shaking him. For all of his authority, the guy was completely disarmed, and he just hung there helpless. Gail gave him a final shove and backed away. "You're a pathetic, cowardly little just like the priest who raped me," she declared, while Art scurried away like a mole back into his church office. It was just a month after Sanderson had fired me from my pulpit. Our mixed gaggle of protesters exploded in laughter and began applauding the huge, ill-clad woman, who had been a regular at our Port Alberni food bank and even came to church sometimes. Gail had begged and borrowed the ferry and the bus money to join us that day in Vancouver at our protest. And like a prima ballerina after her fifth curtain call, Gail turned to us with an enormous smile and nodded to our applause with a long and graceful bow. And then she declared somberly, "They can't get away with it all the time." God has indeed picked the destitute of this world to shame the wise and the strong, but sadly, not that often. For Gail vanished after that, ending up dead the following year in the first of many such mortalities. But we had all stood in her glory that day when she had counted coup against the beast and his minion, and somehow we found the same radiance in ourselves. Stay tuned for more. Thank you.
Sounds very interesting. And I know you're just a phenomenal writer, so please, everybody, if you'd like to support Kevin's work and definitely support him financially with all of the work that he does in support of bringing down the child sacrifice, check it out on Amazon.com. And you can also read a little bit more about it on his website. So, Kev, tell us what's going on. People haven't heard from you in a while. In fact, I've gotten a couple emails where they're actually asking, did the whole debacle with Alfred Weber scare him away?
Well, I guess they don't know me very well, dude.
No,
But
they don't.
no, it was more. I think the whole thing with Alfred was more comic relief from my point of view. Watching all these people complain about me on the air and it passing off as kind of proof, exposing the guy, No, I haven't been on the internet much because of all the work we're doing on the ground. I've been doing a lot. To give you an example, with the Republic of Kanata, there's in Ontario, we have a number of branches that are forming. These are people actively going out and helping to disestablish the authority of the Crown in Canada.
Very cool.
There's a group of people, for example, going to Ottawa, the nation's capital, and they'll be serving the stand-down orders to the Governor General, who is the Governor General of Canada is the, quote, Queen's representative. He's the guy who runs the country. He's the head of state. And it's a colonial arrangement, and we're saying, well, your power is now null and void, guy. Goodbye. They're going to be staging a very public event when they do that. I mean, that's one example. But beyond that, training people in the common law, we've been setting up a program to train common law sheriffs so that people can act in their communities to enforce, for example, the verdicts, the standing arrest warrants against people who've been convicted of these crimes in Canada by common law courts, not just about the native children who died, but the child trafficking, other crimes that are occurring. And so I've just been doing a lot of the old-fashioned kind of on-hands community organizing, and also definitely stepping back from this kind of mad fury sent at us just, over the last couple of months, which was not accidental. It's this typical kind of takedown effort where you get people so distracted they lose their inner focus.
Right.
And the clarity that we really need right now.
Right.
So, no, it was being nice now to be caught on that internet world, frankly.
It's funny because there were so many smear campaigns going on against so many major higher profile people on the internet that people just started getting depressed. And I've actually had people write in and say, I don't even want to be on the internet right now. I don't want to participate in this. What I feel is going on now is there's just this huge blanket of peace, lying on top of the planet. And I was wondering how you're feeling about that. The last 5 to 7 days have just been phenomenal for me, anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I have a strong sense of that. I think it's what's happened, getting people to pull back from not just the internet, but their usual patterns. It's all for a reason for us to get that inner clarity again. I mean, I felt it as well. And I've been getting indications from other people as well that they know now that this is a time, when we talk about reclaiming the law, reclaiming the land, the first reclamation that has to happen is right here in ourselves.
Absolutely.
Our own minds. And this is something that I think events are prompting people to do more of now. So I think I know that's certainly the case with me.
Yeah, I agree. And, the other thing, Kevin, is for those that are super active and passionate about their specific roles that they play, or, for me, I've just always been super focused on motivating and keeping the ground crew focused and reminding them that they are masters, that are stepping into their new roles. I've been so focused on that I've recognized that during that whole flurry of chaos on the internet, it was a really good time for me to just pull back. I was actually grateful for it because it forced that to happen. I think it did for a lot of people. Nobody really wanted to be involved in that, frankly. And I'm not just speaking for you. I'm speaking for a lot of people that are involved in that kind of thing. So how are you feeling as far as the progress going on in Canada right now with all these changes? Do you see some external shifts going on in the Canadian government?
I think that the level you see it at is the willingness of the system to take what we're doing more seriously. We've seen that in the actions of police. the most famous case being with Kel Gadban, the Ottawa policeman who was head of the human trafficking division, who actually assisted us in disrupting one of the Ninth Circle rituals in Montreal. He unfortunately paid for that with his life. We were contacted recently by people in his extended family who agreed with us that they don't believe he took his own life, that he was killed. And that's one of the things that we're getting. The police are actually coming to us now with offers of assistance.
That's
And not
amazing.
just in Canada, in the United States as well. And of course, in Europe, Interpol did use some of our evidence to actually arrest more than 1,000 people who were trafficking children. So you see at that level where individuals within the system are coming forward. The system as a whole will never respond. It can't. I mean, it's too bulky and controlled, to do that. I mean, the JFK story is still the official one, right, of the lone gunman. The system doesn't change the way it speaks or acts, but people within it do, and that sets up a tension in it that will eventually cause it to either come down or radically alter itself. Like what you saw happening in Rome. I mean, the extent to which the present so-called Pope has had to bend over backwards to make it seem like I'm really a nice guy. The Catholic Church is really changing its image here, and you can trust us now, right? We won't harm any more children. That kind of lie being put out is in direct response to the fact that we've exposed so much.
Mm-hmm.
So that creates a real crisis of confidence in any system. There was interesting news item. The Sri Lankan bishops actually withdrew their invitation to have Pope Francis visit them. So the guy's plane had to literally turn around and fly away from Sri Lanka.
Wow.
And how much that's a reflection of other things going on, like the Vatican Bank money that's going into the BRICS Bank in Asia. There's divisions definitely within the Vatican over that and other things. So you see the whole system shaking, and people are beginning to jump ship for sure.
Wow. That says a lot that they would actually reject the Pope arriving there. I mean, wow. That's amazing. So do you actually feel that, is there a group of so-called, I know you guys call them the Royal Mounted Police, right? Canadian Royal Mounted Police. Is there
That's not what
is
I
there
have
an actual group being formed amongst the police there?
There's not so much a group, but like just the number of people who will contact me. The fact that there was a dispute a couple of months ago in Vancouver, an environmental protest over a company, Kinder Morgan.
Right.
And we issued stand-down orders to the Mounties there, and they obeyed them. They stood back because they knew they were illegally arresting people. So the system is getting so weak that if you actually stand up in numbers and don't back down, they back down.
That's
And
very
you didn't
cool.
see that before. So that's another sign of a system in crisis, I think.
So what are you seeing in England? I know that they were starting a movement about getting their republic started. Any news
We've
on
got,
that?
oh, well, constant interest for people wanting to do the same thing. England, like Italy, is very controlled police state. And there's a lot more, because they've been the source of the crime for so many centuries that they're very hyper vigilant and very repressive. But one thing that's indicative of their crisis too is that you notice this Prince Andrew, there was all this thing in the media about his being involved with child rapists.
Mm-hmm.
Now, when they start throwing their own to the wolves like that, that shows you that they're sacrificing their own people to save their skins. That's a sign of people falling out among themselves. And I think there'll be more of that coming for sure.
That's amazing. Any word about anything coming out from the Netherlands?
Well, it's funny you mentioned that because I was just talking to some of the people in the Dutch People's Tribunal, including Toos Nienhaus, who is that eyewitness who saw the human sacrifices, the child sacrifices in the forest of Belgium. She and others have been bringing a new case against a whole number of people who are going to be named soon in the political, not just the royal families in Holland and Belgium and that, but again, top officials of the government and the Catholic Church who are, I mean, I, when I try to describe to people what Toast witnessed and the evidence they have, it's mind-boggling. Just what goes on at these rituals, and definite satanic overtones to all of this stuff.
Remote viewing, out of body, and psychic kind of multi-dimensional travel, astral traveling. But he has attended quite a few of these child sacrifice ritualistic ceremonies, and he told me to tell you that he would be more than happy to talk to you. He has quite a bit of information to assist you with.
We'll do that.
Yeah, I think you guys should definitely connect. So, so tell us a little bit more about the Republic of Kanata. You mentioned that before nothing was getting out because somehow the website was sabotaged, right?
Yeah, the usual kind of attacks. The site's, you know, it's being reconstructed and all that, but it forces people to kind of take a local initiative when something like that happens. What happened on January 15th is that there was a proclamation of independence read. There was, essentially what's happened is over 1,000 people declared their willingness to act under a new jurisdiction, and that is to covenant to be part of a new republic and under common law. So, for example, the courts, they're not acknowledging in an organized way the authority of the Crown, in essence, any Canadian laws. There's been some really interesting support coming from Quebec, because, of course, they've had their own independence movement for a long time. They have no love for the Crown of England, and there's, you know, a lot of our stuff is being translated into French now and everything. But I think the important thing is to realize that this is coming from people in the grassroots. There's farmers on the prairies who are literally, they're talking to their mayor in their town about, you know, disaffiliating from the Crown authority altogether, nullifying, for example, their debts and mortgages. The Canadian Revenue Agency, which is like the IRS in America, using open fraudulent methods to get money out of people. I mean, just criminal methods. All of these are going to be subjects of common law courts that are convening. We're training people, like I mentioned, as common law sheriffs, who are really the foundation in the new republic, because they go out and they not only convene these courts, but they can make citizen arrests. They can issue stand-down orders to the existing police and deputize them to be officers of the new republic. So it's, again, an idea that's spreading slowly, as anything does when it's from the grassroots.
Right. Right. It seems like we're going to need quite a few sheriffs to be able to accommodate the amount of traffic that will occur once people realize the meat behind common law. You know, I've often wondered, once people start looking into even the financial system and the fact that the mortgage industry is totally a scam, I can't even imagine, especially where we are at this point, there is a sense of freedom that I'm feeling right now, externally especially, from the assistance from above. And it's just a matter of, like, I don't know what, not a lot of time before those that are in the mainstream wake up. And I can't even imagine how deluged, you know, particular organizations like yourself are going to be. I mean, have you thought about how are you going to handle that?
Well, we're already in a position with the Republic that we cannot organizationally or administratively handle the level of response we're getting. Don't worry about that, because ideas are really the power behind us. It's not, the power doesn't come from our effectiveness as an organization, but rather as an organism, you know, gradually spreading and living and growing based on ideas and spirit. And so you tend to find, when you look in history, when revolutions happen, right up to the very day that the system falls, people are saying, oh, things are never going to change. People are too conservative. And then suddenly it's like this 100th monkey thing, bang, everything changes all at once.
Yeah.
And we're seeing, you know, I think spiritually and politically in many ways, that phenomena holds true. And we're right on the cusp of that. So now is the time for inner clarity, to be able to, make that move when it happens, when the door opens, to make the move definitively, because all of the attacks coming on us right now are designed to get us so fogged that we don't see that door when it opens. And I think we're all learning that lesson.
Yeah. And I would put a call out to all of the ground crew members, guardians, light warriors, light workers, etc., who feel compelled to assist on the other side with protecting this movement, because all eyes are on what is going on with the Republic of Kanata, especially because it's received so much momentum. And Kevin and I have talked offline, and we couldn't get over the timing. Remember that when we made the announcement about the Burnaby Mountain situation? I mean, shortly thereafter, it was literally a day after you were severely attacked from a variety of different places. And then it just went on from there. So we need to open our eyes, and even if you're the antagonist or the protagonist, all of us need to understand that we are still being the pawns in the divide and conquer scenario. We're here to get our freedom back. We're here to take our power back. We're here to become the leaders and the masters that we came here to be, because we have a lot of people that are just starting to come out of their slumber, and they're going to be looking to us for answers and that sort of thing. So, Kevin, a lot of people have also written into me and said, they just don't understand how you keep on keeping on. Did you kind of want to talk a little bit about, what is it that just motivates you so much? Because I saw your last video and you looked exhausted, frankly. And I thought, oh my God, he's totally burning the candle at both ends. No surprise there. What keeps you going?
Frankly, I don't know. I do. Some part of me that has over the years that wasn't there before it is definitely submerged my true identity, and it doesn't seem like a lot of work. I'm just doing what I feel needs to be done, and I don't really worry about it too much. I find a lot of people in the situation acquire that strength once they kind of let go of the ego, fear-based worry about oneself, and keep your eye and everything focused on simply the gravity of what we're in right now, and all those people out there who are going to suffer if we don't take this step. So I guess I'm too busy and dealing with too much stuff to worry about that very much.
Yeah.
So it's not I can't give people a simple answer for that. It just seems to be happening for me.
Yeah, that's a good point. Well, now, where do you feel at this point, you've been quiet for a little while, what do you feel has been the greatest success story for you in the last month or so? What's been, like, really something you're going, whoo, yeah, I got this done,
Well, I just think the launching of the Republic, because it isn't just a thing happening in Canada. That's the thing to understand. We get a lot of requests from Americans saying, can I be part of this Republic?
Yes.
And what I say to them is, really, the Republic of Kanata is everywhere. It's everywhere where people are taking back their sovereignty from the corporate system that's hiding behind this mask of nations. And look, we have the power now.
Yes.
To do a lot, take back our own mind. From so long, we're just giving an example of how we do that. And it's possible now to say, it's always been possible, but now in a very clear way, to say to the authorities that you don't have authority over us. It's necessary for now. We're more.
Kevin, I don't know why, but all of a sudden I'm not being able to hear you very well. And what you said was very profound. Can you say that again?
Well, just that we've reached a point where not only are these corporate systems crumbling, but the agents within it are coming over to us. And we are saying it's time for you to change your allegiance now and start serving the people and Mother Earth. And once that happens, the whole deck of cards will fall. So this can happen anywhere in the world, not just Canada, and should be.
Do you feel like this is already starting to show itself?
Oh, it is all over. And one thing I should announce that I should have earlier is we're starting a new blog radio program on every Sunday, starting on Sunday, March 1st at 3 p.m. Pacific time, 6 p.m. Eastern. It's called Radio Free Kanata. And it's going to be on BBS Radio, so bbsradio.com/Radio Free Kanata. We're going to be having the people on the ground doing this work being interviewed, featured every week. So people, by listening to that show, can hear the nuts and bolts of what people are doing, how they're doing it, how they're reclaiming Kanata and other places around the world. And we invite anyone with that kind of story of how to do it to come on, and it's really the official voice of the Republic, this program. And so that'll be Sunday, March 1st. It starts up.
That is so exciting. That is so exciting.
Yeah.
I can't wait.
Yep.
I know. There's just so many exciting things going on. We really, truly are moving into the Renaissance. We really are. And it's people like yourself that we have to thank for the amount of, dedication and commitment that you've shown to take that torch all the way to the end. Now, do you feel that the Vatican is getting a message as far as these child sacrifice ceremonies? There has been word that they are starting to slow down a little bit because of the amount of attention and media coverage and the number of people that are coming out and actually exposing their own involvement in these sorts of things. What is your view on that?
I'm not sure whether the actual number is diminishing, but I know that the criminals doing this are much more on their guard. I mean, they're cowards, and so they're very easily influenced to hide. Mm-hmm. Even though they've got a lot of money and power, they're always looking over their shoulders. And we know that that's happening more. We know that the location of these child sacrificial rituals have had to move more often now because they're being exposed more. Police are feeling more willing to take action now that we've created a lot of pressure for them to do that in governments. So they can't bury this anymore. And as a result, that's definitely going to save lives. But we shouldn't really rest on our laurels because this system is so pervasive, so lucrative, that it carries on. It just changes the location. So what we really need is, and to give you an example, we're hoping to convene a grand jury on the west coast of Canada to look into the specifics of how children are traded there. Vancouver and Seattle being very strong areas for this pan-Pacific kind of human trafficking ring to go on. We're going to be working on that, to bring up the details of that. And again, that's going to be reported on Radio Free Kanata every Sunday.
Excellent. Now, what is the whole scenario with the Pope at this time? I haven't been following it, frankly, in the last, say, month or so. What's the latest with him?
Well, he's he has been off the radar screen a lot, partly because the truth of his crimes are coming out more. There's been even members of his own family in Argentina who apparently have been giving evidence to police about his involvement in the children in the dirty there. But also, recently the Queen of confidant of the Queen of Holland came out and said that she would personally bribe to the present Pope over €1 million in order to get her name changed, from the baptismal records in Argentina when he was Archbishop there. So, there's, all of this stuff coming out now. So he has been hiding more off the radar screen, but he's also been doing that because of the role he's playing in this backing of the BRICS Bank and the use of a lot of Vatican money to do that. And that's been quite secretive, but there's been some talk about this in circles in Rome of how they're doing that. And so one of the reasons he's making a trip to America in September, he's going to Philadelphia and then to address the United Nations General Assembly. I think that's in the third week in September. He's, desperate, again, for that political legitimacy to cover the fact of what they're doing. Like, he needs America and England and others on board with him in this. And it's a whole geopolitical battle going on between the new East and West power blocks. And the Vatican, as they have over the centuries, are trying to play both sides. So that politically is a very important trip for him, and that's why we're going to be there trying to get the police and others in New York to help perform a citizen arrest on this man who's a convicted criminal and a convicted criminal organization known as the Vatican.
Wow.
Wow.
I'm like speechless.
Should be fun.
I know. And what? Any news on Ratzinger?
Well, he's, frankly, people don't even know if he's alive anymore. He's hiding out inside the Vatican, not coming out because he knows he could be arrested. And, you know, again, it's hard. It's like the most secretive organization in the world, but we do get it from kind of sources on the margins, you know.
That's crazy. Now, I imagine a lot of people are writing into you, asking a lot of questions and wanting to get involved. How do you, I mean, do you have a screening process, or do you just take anybody that wants to jump in? I mean, how do you go about it?
Well, there is a screening process. The people who want to be involved in various parts of the work, we have district, what are called conveners, people who organize the work in a particular region, and we often just refer them to that person, and they involve them in work and that. We don't really let anyone into the inner circle in the same way we don't let the identity of the judges, the court record, any of that vital information. We don't let any of that out publicly, despite all the pressure for us to do that.
Yes.
And all the criticism. You know, their lives would be snuffed in a minute if we ever did that. Right. So we've had a lot of that Drangheta and the mafia are extremely concerned about what we're doing now. And that they have people looking for me and others on a regular basis. And that, you know, that's one of the reasons I didn't want to mention earlier, but one of the reasons I'm being less publicly visible is for my own safety and the safety of the work of our inner core, which is completely off the radar screen, nobody knows about.
Yes.
So, I mean, it's a more dangerous time, but again, that shows you the impact we're having.
Yeah, definitely. And I know you opted not to travel overseas for this very reason, and I think a lot of us are happy that you didn't do that. I think it's good that you're just kind of hanging low right now. But what are your plans for the future? Are you going to go on a speaking tour? Are you going to start, you know, teaching? You know, what do you see yourself doing in the future?
Well, my dream was always to get a little parish again somewhere and just be a country preacher, you know, frankly. If it's just up to me personally. I always loved that. I miss the pulpit. I'd love to be a parish minister again somewhere.
Wow, I never knew that.
And
That's
teach.
Cool.
Yeah. But that's just kind of a personal dream. The reality is that I'm, I guess, too much, not only in demand, but my own inner demand is that I see this thing through to the conclusion. That's the purpose God gave me and has given me. But definitely in the coming period, like during February to April, during this time, I am seeing more people. My main work is meeting with local organizers and helping to enable them to enable others, you know, through the workshops and others. I'll be doing some speaking, definitely, and I'm going to Europe again in April. Because there's more. We're working, one of the projects we're doing is the sequel to Unrepentant, called Unrelenting. We have some people willing to work on that with us. And, you know, just documenting all of this work over the last 6-7 years, which is historic. I mean, it's very important to get this on record. But of course, I'll be doing book readings. I'm going to do a book tour for my new book, Samuel Wedge. And there'll be more news about that, ITCCS.org.
And we hope to be luring him out to the West Coast one of these days so we can go ahead and launch some of my ideas that I have with you. So,
well, I didn't mention that, but yes, definitely. Yeah.
Hasn't been solidified yet because we all have crazy busy schedules. Well, is there anything else that you'd like to share with us at this time? I mean, I know this was kind of an on-the-fly thing to get you out there again so people know you're alive and well, but
appreciate it. No, I'm just thankful for all the people who've been sending in a lot of their good wishes and love, and you know, It's funny how smear campaigns backfire very quickly. It doesn't matter how intense they burn themselves out quickly because it actually, the old saying from P.T. Barnum, he said, I don't care what you say about me, just don't spell my name wrong. Because there is no such thing as bad publicity. The more you attack somebody, the more people go, wait a minute, what's this all about? Let's look into this guy. Well, thank you. Now a lot more people are listening, especially when the criticism is so childish and based on hearsay and innuendo rather than anything real.
Right.
So, I just want to thank everybody who's been coming forward to asking if I'm okay and that whole thing. It's good to know people care,
Well, and the fact that, people have gone past the step of you're so loyal to your cause, and everybody, they're so focused on saving the children and bringing all that out to an exposure level, but forgetting possibly, the guy behind that whole movement. And, again, I can't say enough about how appreciative I am for all the work. I know how much work you do. I know what you've gone through, and it's pretty scary. There's a lot of people that would not be as fearless as you are, but so much of that has to do with you're so on fire with your love for God and your love for humanity and assisting the people, and that's where you and I really connect, So,
well, exactly, and I couldn't have said it better. So, thank you.
Yeah, no kidding. Well, any other news that you can share with us? Any other good news as far as spreading the word?
Well, not that I can share at the moment, but there's a lot of things in process, and that'll be, again, just to remind people, some of this will be shared on Radio Free Kanata, every Sunday, 3 p.m. Pacific time. There'll be notices about that up at our websites. But, in the future, we can go into more detail about some of the bigger aspects of this, which are not especially easy to talk about. I've never really led with the spiritual aspect, because it's easily misunderstood unless people have common frames of reference. And
we'll go for it. I'm open if you are.
Well, next time I will. I need some time to really prepare, so I'm speaking, from that place.
I agree.
But I think we can definitely do that soon.
Oh yeah, just get me on any couch and start talking about spirituality and God, and you can't shut me up, Anyway, well, Kevin, I love you, and I know that the world is totally feeling the same way, especially if they knew all that you do and how committed you are, and the earnestness and the fierceness of how you have continually stayed on track with this, no matter what has come your way. And I just honor you for that.
It's the children. It's as simple as the fact that children's lives are at stake. What else can we do?
Right. I know, these precious babies that are... Anyway, so visit, please, Kevin's website, ITCCS.org, and also he's got Republic of Kanata, right? That's supposed to come up someday soon when he fixes
website,
that, right? Yeah. And also his radio show on Sundays, Public Free Kanata, right?
Radio Free Kanata.
Radio Free Kanata. Sorry about that.
That's on bbsradio.com. Radio Free Kanata starting March the 1st, every week on Sunday at 3 p.m. Pacific.
Okay. So you guys, at least you now know he's alive and well, which is good news.
Thanks, Alexander.
So take care, everyone. Thank you for listening in. And as always, thanks for all your support. I love you with all my heart. Continue to come up and visit the daily blog page. It's up there 365 days a year just to support you with any kind of enlightening or informative information. And as always, I wish you well. Have a great weekend. Take care. Bye.
We've had some really important things happen. First of all, people probably know about the fact that the Canadian government last week admitted that children died in their thousands in the Indian schools run by the churches and the government. And yet they've never prosecuted anybody for it. They've absolved themselves from any consequence. And yet they're patting themselves on the back for this whole thing. So what we're realizing now is that they've admitted genocide, and once you do that under international law, you really lost your authority, and citizens are obligated under international law not to pay taxes anymore, or obey the laws of a government that's committed these kinds of crimes. So that was quite an acknowledgement on their part, and it's vindicated over almost 20 years of work forcing that truth to the surface. It was interesting too that right after that, the Pope Francis announced that they were going to do a similar kind of in-house investigation of all the child abuse going on in the Catholic Church. But that's kind of like the fox investigating all the crimes in the henhouse. So we don't have a lot of hope that these self-examinations by church and state are going to ever do anything to change it. But at least we're forcing these things out in the open finally.
That's great.
If people want to follow that, you can go to the tribunal website at ITCCS.org. It's got a lot of the information there.
So how many different things are happening lately, Kevin? What can we do to help you? What do you see as the next best moves to make?
Well, people need to not just educate themselves about this, but realize that they have the power under common law to take these actions. Like these kinds of abuses against children go on in every community. We found one of the things we found is how massive the child trafficking is through the government foster care and government care programs. In the U.S. alone, a child is over 300 times more likely to be abused in government care than just living in a family. And so there's massive child trafficking going on with corrupt judges and social workers involved. And that's part of the stuff we're documenting. So if people have any information about that, they should contact me. I'll just type out my email here. You can announce it. It's hiddenfromhistory1@gmail.com. And
we got it right here.
We're working with people all over America and Canada to document these crimes. So that's certainly one thing people can do to help us.
That's great. Keep going. Any questions?
Yeah, Rebecca, do you have questions?
I was going to bring those same stories, two of which you brought. There were three, though. The third, in the last few days, was the Archdiocese of Minneapolis-St. Paul, where two of the bishops resigned. And there's a third, and this is all in the same area, in Madison, Wisconsin, where there's further resignations. So all this has happened in the last 2 weeks, so it would tend to substantiate everything you've been saying, for quite a few years now. Can you give us an update on the Republic, your efforts to establish the Republic, and am I pronouncing this correctly, Kanata?
That's right, yeah.
Okay, and how it might interrelate with the ITCCS.
Okay, well, I'll get to that. The first part about this latest scandal in Minneapolis, it's a real hot spot. We know in the Midwest there is a lot of not just trafficking by the church, but we uncovered a whole network involving Cargill Corporation out of Minneapolis, where it isn't just the church, but there's big money behind this child trafficking. So we know that Cargill executives are involved in this as well. And so when they force archbishops to resign like that, it's basically to protect people higher up, to take the fall, and so the investigation doesn't go further. But don't forget, in the Catholic Church, there's a policy that says you're supposed to cover it up or you'll be excommunicated. So the archbishop is simply enforcing Vatican policy to cover up crimes. And that's why the buck really stops in Rome and with this Pope. And he's coming to visit America in mid-September. He's actually addressing Congress on September 24th, I believe. So that's something we're getting people to try to object to and say, look, why would you invite a convicted criminal like the Pope, who trafficked children in Argentina when he was an archbishop there under the military dictatorship? Why would somebody like that be invited to the U.S. government to address their Congress? It's a really outrageous thing. So that leads to the second question having to do with the Republic. We realized that we couldn't lawfully operate under Crown authority anymore, that the Crown of England as a convicted criminal body had no more authority in Canada. So patriots across the country are uniting at the end of October to form a constitutional republic. And there's a convention in Toronto. There's already been a proclamation of independence issued. That's up online at kanatarepublic.ca. That's spelled Kanata, kanatarepublic.ca, and people can read everything there. It's really, the idea is really spreading. There's over 1,200 people who have already taken the oath of allegiance, and we've even issued stand-down orders to the Crown officials in Canada, like the police and the judges and that, to saying to them, look, there's no reason why you have to serve a criminal body like the Crown. So anyway, that's progressing as well.
Well, you know, a lot of friends have been saying, Kev, you got to respond to all this bullshit about you all over the internet. And my first reaction was, well, why? None of the lies are especially original. They've all been recycled from previous smear campaigns. The only real difference now is that they've got a lot more money and organization behind them. And that's because we're getting very close to the bone. We're threatening a lot of powerful people, including Drangheta and the Vatican child trafficking network. And it's no accident these smears are coming out of Vancouver, because that's where a lot of the stuff is based in Canada. So these smears are well-funded, they're organized, as is obvious to anybody looking at their stuff, although the people involved basically are just talking about me over the air. It's not a very convincing smear campaign, really. The most effective smear campaign is when you have a former insider working with Kevin who blows the whistle on how, you know, the real story. And we've had that game played recently with a few oddballs who show up, you know, who like Alex Hunter and Watchuk and various other women around the world, you know, who all claim they were involved in ITCCS and had to get out. They were even claiming that ITCCS doesn't exist, which is really hilarious because, well, in a way it's a backhanded compliment to me because I must be Superman to have achieved all this single-handedly, folks. The resignation of Joseph Ratzinger, the stepping down of cardinals, all during the same week when they're named in our indictments in the common law court. But I guess they don't realize that a simple check on the internet finds that Cameron Modis and Leith Masters in Australia, who are heading the ITCCS, they've been very public about their involvement in ITCCS. Toos Nienhuis in Holland and the Dutch People's Tribunal. All the people all over America and Canada, and there's too many of them to enunciate. There's dozens of people now been going on the internet showing how they're working with ITCCS. They're enforcing the common law verdicts, the most recent common law warrants that were used to make the police stand down in Vancouver during the Kinder Morgan dispute. All of that's inspired hundreds of people to line up now with our move to establish a republic in Canada, and that's going to be inaugurated on January 15th. Now, all of that is stuff going on in the real world, proving the existence of ITCCS, but everyone ignores all that, and they just look down the little tunnel vision based on their own fears and say, Kevin must be making it all up. Well, don't forget that's exactly what the RCMP smear campaign did in 1998 at our first tribunal in June 1998, when I brought together the first group of Native people to give testimony about the murder and genocide going on in the schools, so-called residential schools. They came down on me and the whole movement in a big way after that, scared off and bought off and destroyed the lives of a lot of the Native people who were involved in that. But these smears are regularly recycled, and they rely on your ignorance and fear to work. Now, it's not working anymore because everything's been validated in the real world. To give you an example, a couple of months ago, the governments in British Columbia and Alberta finally admitted what I've been saying since 1998, and that is tens of thousands of children died in the residential schools. 5,000 alone in British Columbia. Multiply that across the country, and looks like it's true. Everything we've been saying for years, and, you know, while it's nice to be validated, it's very interesting that nobody looks at that when my name comes up. They just look at the fear-mongering and the hate-mongering. Now, I understand where that comes from. Any public official gets that. Anyone in the public eye gets that a lot. I remember the first congregation I had in Pearson, Manitoba. I got up there the first Sunday, and right after I was ordained, I was all optimistic and got up there in the pulpit. I looked down, and there's a woman glaring at me with hatred, and I'm thinking, like, what the hell did I do to this person? Turns out, you know, she had a lot of problems, and I reminded her of somebody in her past life, and it's, you know, that kind of stuff. It's just easy to project that shadow on somebody who's in the public limelight a lot, as I've been for 20 years. So I get that. And as a matter of fact, speaking of 20 years, this month is the 20th anniversary of my firing by the United Church on January 23rd, because I wrote a letter challenging them on their sale of native land to their corporate benefactor, Macmillan Bloedel, which was bought up by Weyerhaeuser, the big logging multinational in Seattle. And inadvertently, I found out about the murder of children in the Alberni Residential School. Now, right from the very beginning, the church and the government, they've been saying all this about me. Kevin's making it all up, even though it's all being proved in practice. Just go to ITCCS.org, you'll see all the evidence. So I don't have to prove anything anymore. I stand on that record and my achievement and knowing my own character in person. What I say to all of you is that it's time to put this paranoia and infighting aside, because every ounce of energy you put into that infighting and suspicion about one another, you take away from that energy that could go into saving children's lives. We know they're going to be killed this week. This is a high point in the child sacrificial cult in terms of the period when children are sacrificed. We're in it right now. We know that children are being taken to the Vancouver Club. We know they're being taken as part of the 12 Mile Club, out onto yachts and then killed and thrown overboard. We have that from insiders. All of that is going to be revealed in a grand jury established this coming month in Vancouver under the auspices of the Republic of Kanata, using common law warrants. There's investigative teams working right now. You should all be working with those teams to get at the heart of how children are disappearing now. And you will be measured by your ability to do that and help children in the real world and protect our liberties and our land from these criminals in high office. That's how we're going to be judged, not by how much you know about this particular person. This infighting is bullshit and has to stop. If we have differences with one another, we share them privately with each other. That's bottom line. That was a policy from the very beginning of our work. We accept no money from the government and churches or any of these criminals, and we don't attack each other personally in public. Now, Alfred Weber knew that. The fact that he does a 180-degree turn and starts attacking me for no reason with nonsense, just lies, no verifiable evidence on his part, all of it shows that he's been heavily influenced. And we actually have information about that we're going to be revealing. So ultimately, this is about maintaining direction and hope, not being distracted, and staying in there for the children and our really sacred work to defend their lives. I invite you again to be part of that and not listen to this nonsense. Stay on course. Our lives literally depend on it. Now, I'll be coming forward with more of these table talks, 10-minute little snippets of reflection that are going to be broadcast on our new blog show, which is going to be called The Common Land, Radio Free Kanata, and other publications and things that will be coming out under the auspices of the Republic in Canada, and also around the world under new common law jurisdictions being established in other countries where the ITCCS is working. So stand by for all of that. Stay strong and clear. Follow your heart and not the gnats and the nonsense being fed into your ears. I'll talk to you again very soon. Thank you, brothers and sisters.